It is day 16 of my 30 days of decluttering in January challenge, and I am tackling the garden today. We are losing light, it is toward the end of the day, but I have been struggling to get my declutters done earlier in the day because work has just been a bit busy. So I finished up work for the day. You can see it's a beautiful sunset. You can kind of see the pinky haze at the top of the screen and reflected in my neighbours' windows. So I do lose light during this particular declutter, but we have enough light for you to see what I got up to. I wanted to tackle the garden today for a couple of reasons. The first one being that it was bin day the next day and there was nothing in the green bin, and the green bin was being collected, and I just could not let that happen. I needed to take advantage because we've definitely been behind with our garden work this year. I think it's just that phase of having small kids, not having a lot of time. We have a big tree that sheds a lot of leaves. So we've got, springing in the garden. We have got shoots coming up, daffodils are starting to come up, got a few tulips, some other things I don't even know what they are. And yet we're still kind of dealing with autumn in terms of still having the leaves. And we did a big leaf clear out before Christmas, but then our green bin wasn't collected for ages, which meant we couldn't tackle the rest. So now it's empty. I want to get as much as possible in the bin. We also have a little play date for my youngest on Thursday, and I want to have the opportunity for them to go out in the garden, play with some of the garden toys if the weather is nice, because I feel like we just haven't used the garden much recently because the weather hasn't been great and the ground's been really soggy and it is still a bit muddy. But I would love for us to go out in the garden a bit more, and I find it much easier to manage the kids in the back garden than in the front, because I can just sort of let them be in the back garden without me having to be there constantly. I can go in and out of the house, get some jobs done. Whereas if we're in the front, given that they are 6, 4 and 2, obviously I need to be with them all the time. What I plan for Thursday is that Daisy and I will get some hot soapy water and we will clean up some of the garden toys. We will clean up the trampoline there and get everything looking a bit nicer. I also want to borrow a jet wash from one of my friends and give the patio a really good clean. We don't have one. I don't want to buy one. I don't want to add that kind of clutter in our lives because we don't need one very regularly. But I know I have friends, I'm bound to have friends that have one that we could borrow. So I think this is going to be a bit of a longer term project. There is quite a lot to do in the garden. Also noticed the fact that I just could not find the broom. I couldn't find it. Couldn't find it in the shed. Couldn't find it at the front of the house. I have no idea where it is. It's probably in the shed somewhere. But we still need to declutter the shed. So I'm using one of the kids. It's quite good. It's a proper broom. It's just a miniature version. And it worked very well. So it's absolutely fine. I just had to bend over a lot to do it. So it's fine. There were so many leaves. By the end of this project, I actually filled the green bin full, to the brim. It had been completely empty, and I think it's deceptive with leaves when they're spread out across the garden. I hadn't realised there was that many, and you can see how quickly we are losing light. Found a few bits of the garden toys, and there are some other items I want to declutter as well from the garden, not just the leaves. But over here in this corner, we have quite a few pots with various plants in. I also have the bigger pot at the front there. We have runner beans growing there, and we still have all the old dead vines from the runner beans last year. So I want to pull those down, and then we'll plant some new runner beans when we get into spring. My mum usually starts them out for us, bless her, because she grows loads of runner beans. So she'll start a few plants, and then when we visit her at some point, we'll collect those and plant them out. And the kids absolutely love helping her pot out the runner beans and then watching them grow at home. And I think it's also it's a really good lesson in how we grow food, where our food comes from, gets the kids involved in the gardening. They help pick the beans, and it's just really fun to eat stuff that you've grown in your own garden. I'd love to grow more, but we don't really have the time, and we don't really have much space. Our garden is quite small, and in some ways I think that is a blessing that we don't have too much to manage. But I would love to have a bit of a bigger garden, just have a bigger, grassy space for the kids. I would absolutely love to get them a bigger trampoline. That is the one thing. If we had a bigger garden, I would go out and get a trampoline, like a proper trampoline. And our kids have a lot of energy. Like, they're not calm kids, they're very wild. I always say that they're feral, and I think that's a good description. They have a lot of energy, and I think having like a nice big trampoline would be awesome for just getting some of that energy out sometimes. But we have the little one, the little toddler trampoline, and that's great for my 2-year-old, and sometimes my 4-year-old will use it, but really my 6-year-old is just too big for it. And it doesn't have much bounce because it is smaller, so you can't really do as much on it. So it's the best thing we can do in the space that we have. I certainly wouldn't want to get a bigger trampoline in that garden. But one day, hopefully, we'll move house and we'll be able to have a bigger trampoline. But serious, like, first world problems, isn't it? You know, haven't got the space to have a big trampoline. It's not really a big issue in life. And I do appreciate that. And I love that we have some green space, because not everyone does at the end of the day. But over here in the pots, like, once I move the pots, there was a lot of leaves hanging around behind them. We also have a lot of pots that have dead plants, or we have a few of a plant that my parents gave us ages ago, and it's like spread into just about every pot, and I don't really like it. So what I want to do is get rid of some of these pots. I've just made a decision during this declutter which ones I'm not going to have in that space, and I put the other ones in our flower bed, which also needs a lot of work. It has a lot of weeds in it. And what I think I might do is repurpose the pots, like get some new plants and put them in, and then put those pots at the front of the house where we don't have many plants. So that's ish my plan, but that's going to have to wait for another time, because we're losing a lot of light, and I need to go and pick up our youngest from nursery. So what I want to do really is just get all these leaves now into the bin, declutter some of the other bigger items, and then there are some more leaves at the other end of the garden. We recently had a tree surgeon in to cut our big tree back. So we have a big sycamore tree, which we love. It was last cut back a few years ago. So it had gotten very big, it grows very quickly. So it had a nice haircut a couple of weeks ago. And that means we won't have as many leaves shedding next year, or this year rather, which would be nice. The tree surgeon blew like all the leaves that were at that end of the garden into a pile in the corner, which was super helpful. So before we get a windy day and they all get like moved around the garden again, I want to scoop all of those up. So already I think it's looking a lot better. There is definitely still more to do. And I think with projects like the garden, where I know I've got limited time, I'm not going to be able to do everything, there is that temptation to think like there's no point doing anything if I can't do it all. So those are the items that I decided to declutter. We had a couple of kids' chairs, which basically just got rotten in the Wendy house, and no one uses them. And then the little toddler slide, because we have a bigger slide, so we don't really need that tiny one anymore. And we've got this bundle of these. I'm trying to be careful because we have loads of shoots up at this end of the garden. All the daffodils and tulips are coming up, and because it was dark I couldn't see them so well, so I didn't want to trample on any of those shoots before they've had time to like actually make their mark. So just scooping up the last of those leaves, and then this is the next day to show you what it looks like now. So yes, there is still work to do, definitely in the garden, but minimise the number of pots here and cleared those leaves. I think it's looking lots better. And then the flower bed is definitely still in need of work. So up here we've got some toys still that I need to sort out. And the shed could do with another lick of paint, but this end of the garden is looking much better, much tidier. I think I need to put some grass seed down. It's hard to tell really like what's just the mud that's been trampled around in the winter and what needs grass seed. And I will see you in the next one. Bye.